Hi, I'm Dr. Les Carter, and I'd like to welcome you to the class that I'm calling the Affair Crisis Plan. I know that this is not an easy subject for us to tackle, and in fact I know some of you are really struggling right now, but I'm hoping that as we go through this class that I can bring some reason and some understanding to you so that you can respond to this situation in a way that is not going to be perhaps as emotionally volatile as it might otherwise be. Now, understand that as I speak with you, I'm not a professor, I'm not an academician. I'm a therapist, and I've had the privilege of being in a counseling practice for over 35 years now and have had probably over 60,000 counseling sessions with a whole lot of individuals and couples going through some similar kinds of things that you are, plus actually a whole lot more. I've written quite a number of books and had a lot of conferences and workshops that I've led. And all that means is through the years, I've had the opportunity to learn an awful lot as I talk with a lot of different people about these kind of topics. And I've learned that there are trends and tendencies and patterns that we can watch for that will give us some insight as to how best to respond. Now you may ask who's most suited to take a class such as this, and I've broken it down into 3 different categories. 1, if you're someone who's had an extramarital affair, you're probably wondering, how in the world did I get myself into this situation, and now what do I do to get my good name back? 2, you may be married to someone who's had an extramarital affair and you're sitting on an awful lot of emotion and you're wondering, can this marriage even be salvaged? And if so, what are the wisest ways to go about learning what kinds of tools can be put into place so that that can happen? And then 3, you may be walking alongside someone who's been through an extramarital affair. You may be a member of the clergy, you may be another counselor, you may be a trusted friend or a family member, and you're wanting to understand more about what you're talking about so that you can come towards them in a more informed kind of way. Let's recognize when an extramarital affair happens, it brings up so many questions. What are we supposed to do now? And how are we supposed to manage things like dealing with the kids or the third party, and how do we get ourselves back to where we can communicate in a sane and civil kind of way? Well, as I talk with you in this class, know that I'm going to be talking on 2 different levels. 1, we're going to be talking about crisis management, and we are going to be talking about, what kinds of accountability procedures need to be put into play, and what to do with the third party, and how to speak things through with the children if that needs to be done at all. And then the second level is going to be more on the emotional and relational side. We're going to be looking at how anger plays into and the making of an extramarital affair, and certainly how it deals with the aftermath of an affair, hidden insecurities and ego, and then how to create an atmosphere inside the home so that as you try to have healing, you can do so in the most wise way. So know that as I speak with you, I'm speaking in such a way that we can have a real good understanding of what we're dealing with that's going to allow you to make some very difficult decisions, and decisions that are going to impact you and your family for a long time. Now, the class itself is broken down into 11 different lectures, and if I may, I'd like to go ahead and just share with you what those are. Lecture 1 is called Discovering an Affair. Now, whenever there's been an affair that comes out into the open, there's a lot of bewilderment that tends to come with it. And so I'm going to point out to you 6 different ways to ready your heart and your mind to proceed once this has come out into the open, and in such a way that we can have some reason associated with the situation. Lecture 2, Removing Deception. There's never been an affair in the history of all humanity that's not been accompanied by some sort of secrecy or dishonesty. And so in this lecture, we're going to be talking about how to break the hold of that deception and bring back a sense of openness and accountability, some of the do's and don'ts that are going to make you know that you're doing it in a way that can be credible. Lecture 3 is No More Entitlement. There actually are some times when a person may have an extramarital affair and they kind of have an attitude that says, now let me explain to you how we're going to manage this. That's not a real smart way to go. We're going to be talking about dropping any sense of entitlement and having a sense of teamwork instead as you go about working through this, both of you together. Lecture 4, Drop Your Loyalty to the Third Party. There's always the question, once an affair has come out into the open, okay, what are we going to do about that other person? Because that can be somebody that can be a part of your daily world or someone you can have some contact with in the future. We're going to discuss some of the do's and don'ts associated with that particular issue. Session 5 is Addressing the Grief and the Anguish. You know, whenever there's been an extramarital affair, you're going to have an awful lot of emotion, and it's just going to kind of come and go. There's no particular rhyme or reason to it. Well, we don't want to deny your emotion, because in fact, it would almost seem to be a bit odd if you didn't have it. And yet at the same time, we don't want it to so run away with you that it's the only thing that matters. We're going to see if we can figure out how to have a sense of balance in addressing the anguish and the grief that's associated with your feelings of loss. Lecture 6 is Establishing Freedom. Now this is an interesting one, because one of the things that I encourage as you try to bring healing to the marriage after an affair is we don't want to make marriage feel like it's a duty and it's a should and it's a supposed to and it's something you have to get back into in a proper way. We want to talk about how to establish that sense of commitment to one another, but to do so with free will leading the way. That's going to be an interesting one. Lecture 7 is Addressing Insecurity. Now, I start with the presupposition that when you're the person who's had the extramarital affair, you're hungry. There's a neediness that's on the inside of you, and you're so needy that you're willing to go outside the bounds of common sense in order to get your needs addressed. That's insecurity, and we need to take a look at that. And then we also want to address the fact that once it's out in the open, then your insecurity can be even heightened. And then, of course, the person who is living with you is going to have plenty of questions. Well, do I matter? And do you care about who I am? And are we going to be able to maintain a sense of cohesion as we move forward? This is going to be an important one for us to address as we try to figure out if we can move forward or not with a sense of unity inside the relationship. Lecture 8 is Uncovering the Anger. Typically, there's some form of anger, frustration, hurt that leads into the making of an extramarital affair, and I can promise you on the backside of it, there's plenty of anger that has to be resolved as you're trying to figure out where to go from there. We're going to be talking about how to bring some balance to the anger that's a part of this particular issue. Lecture 9 is Committing to Humility. One of the ingredients that goes into an extramarital affair is just kind of a raw egotism, a selfishness, if you will. And if you're going to be able to get beyond that and have some healing, we want to go to the opposite, where there's a consideration of all people involved, and that's where humility and an understanding of that comes into play. Lecture 10, what do we do with the kids? You know, sometimes the kids are going to be drawn in inadvertently. How do we manage that? It may be that the children don't know, but then someone is asking, should they know? And a lot of that depends on the age and the circumstances. That's a sticky wicket kind of subject, but we're going to be talking about that one. And then lecture 11, should we divorce? Now, keep in mind, I'm not naive. I understand that plenty of marriages come to an end when there has been an extramarital affair. And so I'm going to be walking through various points that you might want to consider that would indicate whether it would be wise to stay with it and work your way through this difficult situation, or if this is a time to call the marriage to an end. That's going to be a difficult one, but it's going to be one that we are going to address. And then lecture 12. And that's resuming sex. Now, this is assuming that you're going to continue on as a married couple. Then certainly the sexual dimension is something that's going to have to be readdressed because things are so different now. We want to stay away from extremes there, where sometimes people want to get to the sexual dimension way too quickly, and then other times they're going to drag their feet to the extent that they don't want to have to deal with that at all. We're going to need to have a real sense of gentleness and sensitivity as we address this delicate subject, and it's something that can be done in a reasonable way. So there you have it. This is going to be an interesting series, to say the least. Like I said, this is not an easy subject for us to tackle, but that's exactly what we're going to do. And I hope that as you go through this class, you're going to feel like you're being empowered by simply understanding more about what you're dealing with and how to proceed with a sense of wisdom. So let's get going.